discussing democracy. Democracy is a very popular concept as much as it is very controversial as well. Definitions of democracy abound, and for the purpose of our discussion, one may say democracy is a form of government in which the people agree to elect representatives at various levels of governance to administer laws and regulations that regulate their life, governmental affairs, and the society. There is little of democracy without the input of civil society organizations. This is because civil society organizations play a significant role in election and indeed the entire electoral process. The elected representatives supporting INEC is supporting other democratic institutions in the conduct of election, in conducting election monitoring and observation, in producing results of the outcome of the exercise to determine its credibility, and in ensuring effective control of the situation room, which has been a recent laudable development that has been facilitated by civil society organizations, and particularly the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center. Their role in the conduct of electoral process is very, very significant. The tenets of democracy are quite numerous. Very few among them will be highlighted in this webinar. The most important of all is freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of association. These are fundamental rights that are constitutionally guaranteed by the Nigerian Constitution in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Democracy will make a very insignificant meaning if it has not contained the principles of inclusiveness. Inclusiveness requires active participation of the citizen in the civic and political life, and there should be equality of participation, equality in terms of disbursing opportunities in governance, equality in the sharing of dividend of democracy, and of course, equality before the law. Democracy is all about a system that guarantees freedom, encourages participation of people to institute or constitute a government that will deliver and be responsive and accountable to the people. So if there is no equality before the law, the fundamental essence of democracy will be questioned. Then there is a right to vote and be voted for. Every aspiring Nigerian who wants to contest any elected position has a right to vote on the condition that he satisfies the constitutional requirements to contest or to vote. Part of the tenets is that democracy guaranteed all the fundamental rights: right to life, freedom of dignity, freedom of liberty, freedom of association, freedom of religion, and of course, the rule of law. The rule of law is the major mechanism that guarantees the realization of all the noble objectives of a democracy. All things are regulated by law, and Nigeria's democracy is a presidential democracy that is also described as a constitutional democracy, because the Constitution plays significant role in determining, apportioning, defining roles of all governmental organs and whatever is done in governance process. So the democracy is truly a constitutional democracy, beyond the fact that it is also a presidential democracy. Democracy and election. The foundation of democracy is election, because the elected representatives of the people in both the executive and legislative arm are elected by the people. And therefore, the quality of democracy is a function of electoral process. If the electoral process is faulty, if the electoral process is defective, there is very little meaning democracy will be seen by the people. And that is why, for a very long period of time in Nigeria, a lot of electoral reforms have been carried out by different governments, precisely from 1999 to 2022. Much later, when we come to discuss reforms as facilitated by civil society organizations, would be very, very specific in mentioning specific reforms that have been promoted, facilitated, and supported by civil society organizations in Nigeria. In discussing this subject, democracy and election, it is important to state that the legitimacy of elected representatives is attributed to credible electoral process. And trust or respect to elected representative of government is a function, again, of the electoral process. So whatever one will say about democracy, whatever one thinks about democracy, one must always remember the electoral process in terms of credibility to provide a solid foundation and platform on which the entire democratic governance will operate. So the quality of democratic reforms in this regard guarantees electoral integrity and accountability in the polity. This was an electoral reform. As I have said earlier, the role of civil society organizations in the entire democratic governance is enormous. In particular, the civil society organizations have virtually championed the cause of electoral reform in Nigeria. When Nigeria was under military rule, precisely between 77 and 78, the agitation and pressure by civil society organizations have contributed significantly in hastening the end of military rule and return to civilian administration. In 1996, 97, and 1998, coalition of civil society organizations across the country have mounted pressure on the military, and that had significantly contributed to bring the end of military era in Nigeria. In 1999, there was a return, a very good return for that matter, to civilian rule in the country. The 1999 Constitution has consolidated the gains and benefits we have recorded under the 1979 Constitution, which has introduced presidential system of democracy. After the conduct of election and inauguration of government in 1999, there was little done in the electoral process in terms of reform until 2002. In 2002, there was new Electoral Act. The Electoral Act of 2002 was reformed in 2006. A new act was enacted, and the Electoral Act 2002 was repealed. The Electoral Act 2006 has some major gaps that after the conduct of 2007 general election, there were agitations, complaints against the huge flaws in the election. Let President Umar Musa Yar'Adua acknowledge the reality of irregularities in the conduct of election, vote buying, alleged rigging, role of security agencies in the conduct of election, and so many irregularities, and immediately set up the National Committee on Electoral Reform under the former Chief Justice of Nigeria, Honorable Justice Lawal West. The broad terms of reference of the committee was to investigate the causes of violence after the 2007 election, identify all gaps in the manner in which the National Electoral Body conducted the election, identify all causes of irregularities and defects in the electoral process, and consult extensively, locally and internationally, to come out with holistic recommendations that will facilitate effective and sustainable electoral reforms in Nigeria. The report was submitted, and the executive came up with as many as 6 or 7 bills and transmitted to the National Assembly to facilitate electoral reforms. Some of these bills have been enacted into Constitution Alteration Act number 1, which basically is centered on electoral reforms, Constitution Alteration Act number 2, which seeks to expand timeline within which the Independent National Electoral Commission shall conduct election. After the conduct of the election, there were a lot of issues that came up which will require constitutional alteration to extend timeline within which INEC shall conduct election, particularly given the innovation that requires use of technology called cadre reader. The Alteration Act number 3 centered on constitutionalization of National Industrial Court of Nigeria as a court of superior record, given its significant role in facilitating stability in the polity. And the Fourth Alteration Act, which at a point in time has not been assented, but subsequently assented, succeeded in coming out with 5 different Constitution Alteration Acts, some of which include the Not Too Young to Run Act and the act that grants financial autonomy to state houses of assembly and state judiciary, among others. The remaining acts basically affects the democratic governance in terms of either enhancing courts' jurisdiction or limiting timeline within which election petitions shall be concluded, and so on and so forth. So the reforms were largely facilitated and supported by civil society organizations. I can remember the constitutional alterations that led to Constitution Alteration Act number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 was supported and facilitated by PLAC with support of some international development partners and some other civil society organization group as well. Again, the Not Too Young to Run Act was facilitated by YAGA with the support of PLAC and many other civil society organizations. There has been so many ways civil society organizations have played a significant role in facilitating electoral reform in Nigeria. And in recent time, there has been a very fantastic innovation of establishing situation room, which is utilized to monitor the conduct of election and ensure that the election is conducted with high measure of credibility. Now, CSOs have also contributed in democratic development in Nigeria in a number of ways. As I was saying before now, between 1997 and 1998, there has been a huge role played by prominent civil society organizations in Nigeria that has facilitated the termination of military rule in 1999. Some of these civil society organizations include Campaign for Democracy, CD, Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, Committee for Defense of Human Rights, Civil Liberties Organization, CLO, and National Democratic Coalition, NEDECO. They have struggled enough and built collaboration with Nigeria Labour Congress, Nigerian Bar Association, and National Association of Nigerian Students, along with some other organizations. The team of mounted pressure on the military succeeded in bringing the end of military rule in Nigeria, such that by 1999, Nigeria experienced another phase of civil rule with a new constitution that regulates the affairs of government and the country. And I have also mentioned that these civil society organizations have also, especially in recent time, played significant role in election observation and election monitoring. Some of them also have been very instrumental to the establishment of the earlier panel we have said, the National Committee on Electoral Reform. The pressure mounted on the federal government was coordinated by civil society organizations and Fantastic reports and memos were submitted to the government, and the government relied on those submissions and established the Waste Committee, which lays a solid foundation of all the subsequent reforms as we have it today. The specific measures or mechanisms or instances which we may say or we can cite in relation to the role of civil society organizations in deepening of democracy in Nigeria may include the role of CSOs in educating citizens on democratic reforms and electoral process, several capacity development programs locally and internationally and regionally have been facilitated by different civil society organizations of Nigeria or key actors and players in the democratic process. The foundation of positivity in activity that will sustain credibility is knowledge. They have played significant role in conducting different sensitization seminars and workshops by bringing stakeholders who have been key actors in the electoral governance in Nigeria. They also built accountability checks on the electoral process and reforms by regularly tasking INEC and other relevant stakeholders to explain and render accountability on how certain things are done. They also promote tolerance and accommodation of pluralism and diversity. The very good example of what happened in the conduct of 2015 election between former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan and the incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari was facilitated by civil society organization. It was so nice and interesting that the former president has acknowledged and congratulated the incumbent president even before the final verdict was declared. The role played by CSOs was quite interesting and very cherished. They also promote lobbying and struggle for access to information, particularly in the National Assembly, which many Nigerians have a lot of reservations on how and why and the extent to which activities are carried out. They have created a lot of opportunity by which many civil society organizations now run to different committees of the National Assembly and access information, not even before the enactment of the Freedom of Information Act. They also develop strategies to expose corrupt conduct and manipulation of the democratic process. They promote the values of compromise, tolerance, moderation, and accommodation of opposing views in politics, which was like the example I have earlier said that has taken place between the former president and the incumbent president. They also create avenue for debates by political stakeholders so as to improve the quality of democracy and democratic process. Now, if we are to list the role played by the civil society organizations in providing capacity development service, in coordinating the affairs of some related organizations, Nigerian Bar Association, Nigeria Labour Congress, in bringing them under the umbrella of collaboration to team up and ensure a sustainable democracy in Nigeria, and in facilitating, auditing, or exposing corrupt practices, particularly official corruptions. One will say that there is hardly a body one can remember, especially non-governmental body, that play significant role and continue to play such role, like the role played by civil society organizations in Nigeria today. Notwithstanding the significant role of CSOs in entrenching, consolidating sustainable democracy in Nigeria and the various electoral reforms civil society organizations have facilitated, and the very good role of providing opportunity for public engagement, policy dialogue, constitutional discussions, facilitating constitutional reforms leading to constitution first alteration, second alteration, third alteration, and post alteration acts, and many more contributions that create awareness to Nigerians and increase citizens' access to governance tools, mechanisms, and actors. One may not assume that civil society organizations will not face some challenges. This webinar will, beyond discussing the role of civil society organizations, also require a little contribution from participants on what challenges, if any, do you think civil society organizations face in discharging their significant role of deepening democracy in Nigeria? If these challenges have been remembered or mentioned, then one will begin to provide some solutions as way forward. But we will expect contribution to get many more way forward, not in relation to challenges faced by civil society organizations in Nigeria, but contributions that will support, that will promote, that will consolidate the gains sustained or secured by civil society organizations in deepening democracy in Nigeria over time, so that many more gains would be achieved in the nearest future. Some of the issues discussed as way forward will require CSOs to continue with the struggle, especially for legal space. At the moment, there has never been any institutional, policy, regulatory, or legal framework that has been enacted to facilitate the operations of civil society organizations in Nigeria. So the legal environment, if created, will support more what the CSOs are doing in the country, even though there is a lot of controversy on the desirability or otherwise of having an institutional policy or legal framework that will regulate the operations of civil society, civil organizations in Nigeria, given their role as watchdog of wrongs and injuries committed by government against the citizens. There is also a need to build trust in the polity. There is also a need to encourage or support citizens to participate in democratic development, especially through enhanced avenues for capacity development services. The capacity development, provision of capacity development services should not be limited to members of civil society organizations alone, or members of INEC, or staff of INEC, or staff of the National Assembly, other critical stakeholders, including members of the general public, should be included to benefit from this series of capacity development that will increase awareness in the citizens on the governance process. There is also need to develop mechanisms for funding of CSOs. Yeah, this is very critical because civil society organizations are not funded by government and therefore will require a very realistic, consolidated and sustainable source of funding so that they will continue to do the good work of watching government to ensure good governance in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. There's also need for support. There's also need to increase or enhance support for the enforcement of the electoral laws and regulations. There's also need for unified voice for democratic reforms, in spite of increasing electoral reform in Nigeria from 2002, 2006, 2010, and now 2022. With the Extant Electoral Act 2022, there are still need for more reforms. The Electoral Act 2022 has contained fantastic innovations that constitute significant improvement over what has been available under the Electoral Act 2010. Yet, there is still need for more enhanced reforms, which should be advocated and pushed more by civil society organizations. They owe the credit of all the electoral reforms, and therefore they should continue. There is also need to liaise with the media to protect democracy. Civil society organizations shall always network and collaborate with other critical stakeholders, especially the media, to expose wrongs, to increase awareness, to provide capacity, and to require the media to play their role as mouthpiece of the society to entrench our democracy to be sustainable, to be able to realize all the noble objectives expected of it. Then there will be need for code of ethics or conduct for civil society organizations in Nigeria. Even if there is no legal or policy framework that regulates the operations of civil society organizations, there should have been a code of ethics or conduct that will regulate the operations of civil society organizations. This will check abuse, this will check misuse, and this will check malpractices that may, from time to time, be experienced by some organizations. The earlier these measures are taken to improve the operations of civil society organizations, the better for us, the better for Nigeria, and the better for Nigerian democracy. It is a fact that no Nigerian today will doubt that the democracy will not survive and be enjoyed more without civil society organizations, given the multidimensional role played by civil society organizations. Distinguished participants of this very important webinar series, I think at this point, I will crave your indulgence to take a little rest to give you some minutes to make some contributions on how civil society organizations will continue to play the good role of deepening democracy in Nigeria. Before then, however, I would like to appeal to you to please don't forget to register the attendance. Sign the attendance sheets as forwarded, please. And also, at the end of the program, do not forget to fill your evaluation form. It is this evaluation form the organizers of this webinar series, Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, will use to determine future engagement that will hopefully deepen democracy in Nigeria by asking you to continue to play your role and various positive contributions. I think I will now begin to allow comments and contributions. The time we have is not quite large. However, within the limited period of time we have, we will still take few contributions so that the objectives of the webinar will be maximized. Thank you.
Mine is a form of contribution. I want, could it be possible for we to have a unified code for CSOs, national unified code for CSOs, because it will help us a lot. It will help us a lot. So I would like to suggest, let us have a national unified code for CSOs.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. This is noted.
Thank you for your presentation. And I like the way it ended, even though I missed half of it because I was logged out at some point, but I'm back on. And so I came at the last two slides, but I like what I saw at the end. And I just like to inform that civil society organizations across the country have been working on a self-regulatory model framework, which is about ready, which contributions came from civil society organizations. We had the regional meetings with CSOs in the north and CSOs in the south. We had that in Lagos and one in Kano. We had one in Abuja, where we have put together a code of ethics, perhaps call it minimum operation standards for civil society organizations. We were doing this under the ambit of the EU Agents for Citizens Transformation Program. And we have that document ready, which we're going to share with all civil society organizations across the country for validation. We've gone through the process, and I think what your conclusion just fits into what the plan is, because if as civil society network organizations across the country to put together this self-regulatory framework adopted by networks and civil society organizations to put themselves within the ethical framework that engenders trust and do in the country. So that document is about ready, and we'll be sharing it with civil society organizations across the country.
Very much.
My name is Jake Epele from the Albino Foundation. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful presentation, and thanks for plaque for this wonderful initiative of bringing everybody together. And like I said, my name is Jake Epele. I'm the founder, CEO of the Albino Foundation. Prof, I would have loved you to speak a little bit more on inclusivity component of your presentation, because the greatest problem that we have as relates to inclusivity is one, getting the community to participate. There's always voter apathy. And then, of course, there are very few OPDs, what we call organizations of persons with disability, which fits into the CSO framework. How do we encourage more organization to emerge? And finally, many organizations on this platform, I want to use this opportunity to please appeal to you to ensure the twin track approach in programming. Number one is that none of your programs should be exclusive. Every of your programs should be inclusive of disability component. Number two, the second layer of the twin track approach is that for every program, have a standalone program that speaks to inclusivity. This will help the community that is over 31 million in Nigeria. And of course, it's important that you also give employment. There is no democratic process that is exclusive. True democracy must be free, fair, credible, and inclusive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm Kabiru Saidu Dakata from Center for Awareness on Justice and Accountability, KAJA, from Kano State. Thank you very much, Prof, for the wonderful presentation. I want Prof to shed more light on what civil society needs to do to rescue the state electoral commissions, because most of the things Prof mentioned are things to do with the role of civil society in strengthening the electoral process, especially elections organized by INEC. So what are the things that civil society organizations need to do to strengthen the work of the state electoral commission? Secondly, is the challenge before us. You know, before the Electoral Act amendment, there was even issue of having more polling units in Nigeria. So, and it's like the actors are silent on this. We need to go to the communities, rural communities, to educate the electorate on this development. So what are the areas that you think civil society organizations can partner with other actors to make this possible? Lastly, the issue of democracy and elections. Most of the actors limit their thinking to at times make these terms interchangeable. So we need to also bring out some differences, some demarcations to show that democracy does not start and end with elections. And if we can understand this, we can now understand that there are other roles to play after election. I mean here that we need to bring out those roles that civil society organizations can play in holding the leaders accountable even after winning elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the good presentation. And I mean, it was a huge content presented with a little time consumed. My name is Solomon Weke from the Inclusive Friends Association. And I would like to make contribution around partnership with the media. You made mention of the media. The media is a very important aspect of the work we do. And I thank J.K. Pele, who have spoken already on inclusion. So it's very important that we as the civil society, we partner with the media just to make our voice more audible, because most times during our last training with the media, we notice a huge gap of their knowledge about disability, and most times how they carry this news around. Also, paint a scenario, paint an image around disability issues, which is very, very ugly. So after the training, we notice a lot of changes. So I'm just urging, I'm just pleading that the CSOs here will try as much as we can to partner with the media, you know, just to ensure that our processes are being heard outside there, just ensure that we have a good audience, you know, that follow up with the processes. Also, secondly, it is also nice that we find a way, I mean, this has been mentioned over time in a couple of meetings, that we find a way to collaborate more with the private sector. You know, while we suffer a lot in an area of policy making and policy implementation, the private sectors are also victims of this issue, because most times you see policies that come out and they come out to, for instance, high taxation for the profit making organization, that's the private sectors. So if we can collaborate with them, sharing some form of idea to have a force pushed together with the private sector in terms of policy making and implementation, so that they first would be inclusive and be moderate for the private sector as well. So this too is this is just my few points of contribution. Thank you very much.
Everyone, I'm Loretta Inofe Laurel with Girls Power Initiative, Abuja. I would like to thank CLAC for the webinar series on the role of civil society in deepening democratic tenets. And I believe this is first of many series yet to come. Though mine is a contribution though, I'd like to just share with us that though we might not be interested in politics individually, but we have no choice to be in governance and keeping our leaders accountable. But one way in which we can begin with this is having credible elections, as Prof has earlier shared, on how the efficiency of elections can also determine democratic process. Yes, as CSOs, we might have different thematic areas, be it in WASH, in adolescents and young persons, or any other thematic area with different target groups. And we might say, okay, fine, I'm not fixed on elections and governance process. But we know that once we have an effective governance or democratic process, the ripple effect that would achieve from it would help in achieving national goals and contributing to global goals, which we target. So I would like to suggest that irrespective of the different thematic areas or target groups we work in, we can begin to include leadership and accountability as an important component in capacity building sessions we would have with them. We shouldn't limit ourselves to just the technicality of our thematic areas and forgetting that governance or democratic process has a huge role in the results we want to achieve. Thank you very much, and thank you, Prof, for the beautiful session.
I'm Professor Olubomi Ashimolowo. I'm the Executive Director, Gender Development Initiative. I'm also the Ogun State Coordinator for 100 Women Lobby Group. That was a nice presentation. And I want to provide an answer to someone who asked about the expansion of voting centers. It's been done and it's been published. And I think it was used for the last local government election in Ogun State. Just to provide that information. Well, on how civil societies can better play their role, I think it starts with the Constitution, which we are currently on, having to see a way whereby we can build an inclusive constitution, most especially for the females. We can't play our roles adequately unless we look at the party leadership and try and restructure. Aside that, we also look at the leadership, even within Nigeria. How can we have that 35% affirmative action? And the conversation has started. So the CSOs has to be involved. We don't have to wait until there's election before we start lending our voice. So I want to suggest that the time is now. We can do so much using the media, just like you highlighted. We can go on social media, look at ways by which we can do it, pro bono. Thank you very much.
I want to use this opportunity to tell you that next week on Monday, we are going to have another webinar series on electoral accountability by elected representatives in Nigeria. Most of the issues that you have contributed on need to go beyond election in discussing democracy and to discuss matters of accountability. Electoral accountability and governance accountability would be addressed on Monday when we have another webinar series on electoral accountability by elected representatives of the people. So by the grace of God, on Monday, we are going to take it up. We have only limited this discussion to examining or discussing the role of civil society organizations in deepening democratic tenets. I thank you immensely for your wonderful contribution, and I will take very few minutes to make a little remark or respond to some of the issues raised. First and foremost, I'm very, very glad to hear that the civil society organizations have gone far in coming up with a wonderful initiative of proposing national unified code for civil society organizations in Nigeria. This has favorably responded to non-existing legal policy or regulatory framework that regulate the operations of civil society organizations. The only thing I will add is that the code should be, like you say, you are going to share fantastic, but there should be a regional and national workshop where it will be examined and validated so that we will make progress. I congratulate you most sincerely for this wonderful initiative. Albino Foundation has advocated for inclusivity in participation, inclusivity in governance, and inclusivity in all programs for capacity development initiative. This is absolutely true, and I hope by the time a report comes out for this webinar series, PLAC will take note and will increase the degree of its inclusivity. Kabiru Dakata from Center of Awareness, Kano, there is need to, our discussion has nearly concentrated on role of INEC in regulating federal election. There has been little we have said on role of CSOs in conducting election at local government level. We have taken election as a whole, that the basis of suitable democratic order is credible electoral process. So when we said credible electoral process, we are referring to conduct of election and role of stakeholders in the electoral process at all levels. The role of INEC and the role of CSOs is very key. Whatever civil society organization should do to assist or support INEC or ensure that INEC discharges its constitutional and statutory responsibilities well should equally be extended to state independent electoral commission. All we are concerned is to have improvement in the electoral process. Again, on polling units to be created, I'm glad that Professor Olubimi has provided us with very useful information from Advocacy that there has already been expansion of voting centers. All that is needed to be done is for civil society organization to continue to create public awareness on the current development and trend. Civil society organizations should organize a series of capacity development service to educate electorates and all stakeholders on major reforms that are contained or innovations that are contained in the Electoral Act 2022, so that all stakeholders will know their role and will proceed to discharge such corresponding roles accordingly. Solomon has advocated for inclusive prep association, has advocated for increased partnership with press. Yeah, this is very key, and this has been advocated in the lead presentation. The role of press in sustaining or ensuring stable democratic order cannot be overemphasized. What I think is important is for civil society organizations to chart ways for collaboration with the press at all levels of governance. Loretta from Diaspora Initiative, yeah, has contributed wonderfully well. Yeah, credible election is the foundation of the whole expected democratic order. And I have agreed with you that there will be need to emphasize on leadership and accountability, which I said on Monday, webinar series, we are going to address your concern, Loretta, because the subject matter of the webinar would be electoral accountability by elected representatives of the people. Unlike concentrating on election or reform on election, we will need to go beyond election. After election, what happened? What next? Then those who are elected will be expected to now respond to the yearning, aspirations, and needs of the people. So by the grace of God, on Monday, when we have the second series, these and many other related issues would be discussed. Now, there is, again, a very wonderful contribution from Professor Olubimi, yeah, on information on expansion of voter centers and the critical constitutional issue Prof you have raised, yeah, on inclusivity. Yeah, the constitutional amendment is ongoing, and I think civil society organizations, and particularly civil society organizations representing women groups in Nigeria, should try to champion the cause of ensuring a little improvement in women representation, either in the political scene or in the scheme of governance, in any way or manner that you think you will be able to succeed. And the structure of party leadership and any other thing that will bring affirmative action into reality, I think is a challenge that you should try as much as you could to respond. These are my few responses on all the issues raised. Your contribution has been quite wonderful. I'm not unaware of the fact that there are many more participants that are ready and willing and wishing to contribute, but time may not permit. I thank you all for your participation. I thank you all for your wonderful contribution. And I want to use this opportunity, one, to remind you that on Monday around this time, we are going to have another webinar series on electoral accountability by elected representative of the people. Participants should not forget to sign the attendance sheet. Participants, again, should not forget to fill the evaluation form, which, like I said, would be utilized by PLAG as basis of charting further course of engagement. Without this evaluation, we may not know the success, the achievements we have recorded in conducting this webinar series. Very distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, it is my pleasure to request your kind pleasure to say bye for now until we meet on Monday. Thank you all. I want to thank PLAC for organizing this webinar series. Yes, Policy and Legal Advocacy Center has been a wonderful CSO in Nigeria, championing cause of electoral reform, electoral accountability, managing situation room, and of course, providing series of capacity development services to critical stakeholders in the democratic process. I also want to use the same opportunity to express our very sincere appreciation to USAID and Scale for supporting this wonderful process, and hope they will continue to do more, because we are all out to ensure not only credible electoral process, but credible governance in Nigeria. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I thank you immensely for your contribution, and I say bye for now until we meet on Monday for the second webinar series on electoral accountability by elected representatives of the people. Thank you all, and God bless.